Hey everyone, I'm Mark.
I'm Alex.
And we're from Jenson, USA to talk about all the reasons why you need an e-bike, specifically the Orbea Rise, in your bike quiver. So in today's video, we're out here on location in our local trails at Sycamore Canyon. As you can hear, the water's flowing. The trails are a little dry, but we're still gonna get out there and ride the bike. But we thought we would kind of maybe address some of the comments we see out there all over the internet saying you don't need an e-bike because there's so many different factors. We think the Orbea Rise is the bike for you.
Yeah, so we're gonna talk a little bit about why this bike might change your mind about e-bikes.
All right, so let's first start. Alex, this is your personal Orbea Rise.
Yep.
Admittedly, some of us gave you a little bit of crap when you first came in with an e-bike, right? A lot of us, we ride acoustic bikes.
Yeah.
You ride a downhill bike probably 80% of the time when you're riding, right? Mm-hmm. You showed up with an Orbea Rise in your quiver all of a sudden, but you kind of let us explore there a little bit.
Yeah.
But before we get into those really cool points on like why we really think you should have an Orbea Rise in your quiver, let's just talk about the breakdown, and we can just go over your bike specifically, and then we'll kind of talk about, a little bit about the different options that Orbea has on their Rise models. Mm-hmm. But specifically, what model is this for the Rise?
Yeah, so this is the H10, which is the aluminum. It's basically the base model, but even at the base, you get some pretty decent components, and it's pretty sturdy, so it can rip right out of the box.
Absolutely. So it either comes with a 140 or a 150 in the front, which yours came with a 140 in the front.
Yeah.
And then a 140 in the rear. Mm-hmm. So that's still that really nice playful travel for a trail bike.
Yep.
And you might think, okay, well, it's an e-bike. Why wouldn't they put more, playful, more suspension there for us to kind of mess with? But I think because of that lightweight, like you've told me,
yeah,
it still works really functionally well.
Yeah, it's still a great all-around bike. It's going to do most of what you're going to be riding. So yeah, it's a great setup.
It's got a pretty lightweight battery. So yours has not the 520, but I think the 310 battery in there. So it's a little bit, but you can also throw a range extender in there if you're really doing those real long rides on it.
Yeah, and personally, I've never even gotten close to running this out of battery. I've gone on some pretty decently long rides, and after a couple hours, unless you're going on an all-day adventure, you're probably going to be fine on the stock battery.
This is an aluminum model. Mm-hmm. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the uniqueness of the welds on this bike?
Yeah, so what Orbea does on their aluminum frames is they actually smooth out these welds. So you can't see any of the welds on the head tube and the seat tube area, which is normally something you could only find with a carbon bike. But Orbea allows you to have that same fit and finish on an aluminum bike, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, so it is a triple butted alloy frame. Mm-hmm. But from afar, it's almost going to look carbon because it's so sleek.
Yeah.
Just even when sitting in the cockpit, like it looks really nice. When you're looking down, it's almost like you're sitting on a carbon frame. Like they do a lot of
people ask if this is carbon all the time because you really can't see many welds except for at the bottom near the battery.
Very cool. Some of the other really cool options is it's got the 1.5 factor on the battery. So basically, even though, say, if you had the 500 battery and if you were someone looking for that like longer range, with the 1.5x factor, you're kind of getting like an 800 watt battery with the weight of the 500. And similar with the 300 watt, you're kind of getting that 500, 600 watt battery, but at the weight and the actual size of a 300 watt battery in there.
Yeah, the way they tune these motors, they get the most out of the batteries. And for some people that might be wondering about the power, worried if it's not enough, it's plenty enough to get up anything. You can get up as steep a trail as you have traction for with pretty little effort. So if people are concerned about power, it's not something I would really worry about on this bike.
All right, so now that we've kind of gone over some of the numerical stuff, talking about suspension and the welds and all that, let's talk about the important stuff here and like the reasons why you really need an Orbea Rise in your quiver. And I think the first thing that we should address here is like, how playful is this bike in comparison to a typical trail bike or something like that? Tell us a little bit about how this bike specifically rides for you, and like what you think about it.
Yeah, this bike is definitely a lot more playful than you'd expect for an e-bike. Honestly, like as soon as you get rolling down the trail, you kind of forget that you're on an e-bike. And the only time that I really notice the weight is when it's a good thing. When you're in the air, this bike jumps really stable. It definitely resists getting bucked around, getting, kicked sideways in the air. This thing is super stable, but it's also still playful. You know, if you need to hop over rocks or logs or whatever, it doesn't really take that much effort to get this thing off the ground.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we recently rode Greer, and you were ripping on this thing, and I mean, not only did I see you like do really well on the technical climbs, that wasn't just you needed a bunch of power in a motor to get you up, but it actually took like some agile pivoting, you know what I mean, moving that front and rear tire around in a direction in which to get you through those rock gardens on the climbs. And then you were also ripping all the jump lines as if you were just on like even, you know, your dirt jumper or whatever else.
Yeah, it's a great all-around machine. You know, the power does help you on the climbs, but the weight does help you on the downhills. So it's kind of got, you know, two sides to it.
Absolutely. So, I mean, you're getting that playful feel like a typical bike, but you're getting that motor to kind of keep you going. How does this thing climb?
This thing climbs great. Having that extra power is definitely nice on the steep and technical stuff. One thing that this motor does is when you stop pedaling, it does keep going just a little bit extra, which is actually really nice on some of those technical sections where you might need to time your pedal strokes to not scrape. So it definitely brings new challenges to riding in a positive way, where you can start attacking those climbs and make them fun and try to find some new lines, and it just makes the uphills feel a little more fun like the downhills.
I like that. You know, uphills for a lot of us, unless you're, you know, cross-country climber or climbing's your thing, like that uphill is where you kind of start feeling yourself slogging out on a trail. I've had times when I had that question in my head is like, why do I even ride bikes? This is so miserable. But then once you're going downhill, it doesn't matter anymore. But like you said, this kind of adds a little bit of fun there. So you're not even getting that, you know, feeling per se.
Yeah.
But another thing, you know, speaking about the fun of it, laps. I mean, and lines, right? You're talking about, you know, finding those lines and doing those laps. I think something like the Orbea Rise here, what it offers you is that very similar feel to the trail bike you're used to riding, but you can go hit 3 different lines on a trail that maybe on a weekend day of going out with your boys and your friends, you're only going to get 1 lap in. This thing, you're going to get 3 or 4, maybe more on it.
Yeah, this definitely opens up a lot of possibilities. One of the main things that I like is being able to do multiple laps on the same trail. It really lets you dial in your lines on a trail when you can do it back to back. And then it also allows you to explore new trails. There might have been a trail that you've seen for a long time and you just always pass it up because you're tired. On this thing, it's not even a second thought. It's like, oh, I want to try that new trail. Might as well, because, you know, I have the power to do it. It's just not a worry of like, oh, am I going to get stuck way out on this trail and not have the energy to get back? On this thing, it's really not even a worry.
Yeah.
And it allows you to explore new trails, try something that you might have been hesitant to try before. And it just opens up a lot of doors.
Yeah, and I think with the Orbea Rise, like, it kind of creates a different experience on a bike, right? Before, maybe you do 1 or 2 trails in an area like Sycamore Canyon. It's a bunch of smaller sections of trails that you ride, and you kind of link them together, and you kind of get used to a cycle. Every time you come out, I'm going to come and hit this trail, then that one will link to this one. And then by the time you've done 3, you've kind of hit your limit. But I think with the Orbea Rise, it opens up like, hey, I'm going to do all 10 sections of trails in 1 lap.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to do that again. And so the stoke level that you're leaving with on that day of riding is so high, but it also doesn't take away from the fact that it's like the next time you go out with a bunch of your friends, maybe you're going to ride your acoustic bike. Like, this doesn't make you any different of a rider. It just kind of keeps you riding.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the main concerns that people have is if they get an e-bike that they're going to become lazy. But I think a lot of what this bike offers is actually motivates you to try new things and to get out on the bike more. There's times when, you know, I'm on my lunch break and I'm thinking, oh, do I have enough time to ride? On this thing, I don't even have to worry about that. You know, it's easy to get in a few trails in a very short amount of time. I actually end up riding my bike a lot more because of this bike, when if I only had my regular bike, you know, I might pass up going out on a ride.
All right, so you just talked about like those quick little lunch spins where maybe you'll have a short amount of time. Maybe you just got off work, the sun's getting down, but you want to get a couple, you know, little quick runs in on the bike. What about like fitness on like a day when you are out getting out there and you're pedaling really hard? Is this taking away from your fitness level, or?
I mean, I would say it takes that threshold up a little bit to where, you know, you're not going to be struggling up some of those climbs that are just a grind. But I feel like this bike really pushes you to kind of put in a little extra effort because it rewards you so much. When you put in more power, it rewards you that much more. It makes you want to ride a little bit longer than you normally would, maybe push a little bit further. And I think it's all just up to, you know, what your goals are. If you want to get a lot of exercise out of it, you can absolutely do that on this bike.
What you're talking about is you can kind of push your fitness level, but there's also 3 modes, right? Talk to us a little bit about the modes, and then we'll kind of, you know, figure out how that fits to people's quiver.
So there's Eco, Trail, and Boost. And basically, it's like it sounds. There's lighter modes and there's more powerful modes. I would say if I'm riding with a group of just acoustic bikes, Eco mode is more than enough to keep up with everybody. When I'm on my own, I tend to go either Trail or Boost. But I think that just depends on like the pace that you want to go. If I'm out by myself, I am in Boost mode, but I'm also I'm putting in about the same amount of effort. I'm just going to be going a lot faster.
Yeah.
So you kind of just dial in the modes depending on what kind of ride you're on.
Yeah, and I think that like with those modes, like they don't take away from the group ride aspect. You still come out on, you know, rides with this thing with the whole company here at Jenson when we're going and doing like a trail day and riding. But like you said, on days when you're just solo, you're not really out there to maybe get a big climb in or something. You just want to go, you know, hey, I just want to work on this jump line, but I got to keep doing this climb. I don't want to burn all my energy in my legs every single time. Yeah. When I can just sit there and focus on, say, I'm working on this technique or whatever on my bike.
A lot of times I just want to get in as much miles as I can get, and putting it in Boost just makes my ride a lot longer.
Absolutely. So the Orbea Rise comes in either an aluminum or a carbon model that goes upgrades all you want for its components and everything else on the bike. But from an overall perspective, it's got a great progressive suspension curve on it. You can continue to upgrade it like you have continued to upgrade your bike over time and made it really yours. It's not like you buy an e-bike and that's the way it is, and the way you buy your Rise, you're never going to change it. It's equally as upgraded as any acoustic bike, and you can continue to do stuff, even range extenders. If the battery life is the issue, you can do that. You know, you've gone as far as going super out of the box or super, you know, away from the box and put a Cascade link on there to make it even crazier, right? You've updated the fork, like everything. So there's so many different options you can do with it that still makes it a unique bicycle to get you out there and keep you pedaling. Yeah. So some of the points we've discussed is it's not going to take away from your fitness. It's still going to be just as playful as your acoustic bike. You're going to be able to do so much more laps and really work on those technical issues that maybe you've found nuances and like deficiencies in your riding, but you can get out there and do those, and you can execute a lot of fun in a short amount of time. So we really believe that the Orbea Rise should be the bike for you and the next bike you should add to your quiver. If you like this video and you want to see more of some of the videos we've done, maybe you're about to buy an Orbea Rise and like Alex, you want to change your saddle, we got a video also out there on the top 10 saddles for you to make sure you got that good fit when you're out there pedaling for hours and hours.